out before us. Well,
Sorry.
hey, everybody. I had no idea I was wondering, it's empty inside. I'm wondering where everyone was.
All right, good morning. Good morning, Governor Newsom, esteemed government officials, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, family, and members of the press. My name is Paul Hilskamp, and I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Moxion Power. On behalf of the entire Moxion team, it's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of you as we gather here today at Moxion's headquarters in Richmond, California, in part to celebrate the start of production from our first factory. We started Moxion 3.5 years ago with a clear mission to create the first fully electric alternative to the diesel generator and to accelerate the electrification of industries that rely on temporary power. Across construction sites, utility operations, film sets, and live events, the demand for mobile energy storage technology has never been greater. Our customers increasingly recognize the inefficiencies, extra costs, and negative environmental impacts of burning fossil fuels in generators to produce temporary power. The unfortunate reality is that our customers have never had a choice. There has never been a clean, sustainable option for temporary power until now. In 3.5 years, Moxion has grown to 250 people. That's 250 green jobs building the cutting-edge, clean technology that will drive California's innovation economy forward. We're fortunate to have so many amazing, talented individuals join us on our mission. And I want to thank all of you Moxions in attendance today. Given that we're celebrating our first factory, a very special thanks to Josh Ensign, Jed Mickle, Charles Shin, Nelson Ron, Patrick McCarthy, and everyone else involved in designing, engineering, building, and operating this amazing facility. Over the next 3 years, we expect our team to grow to over 1,000 people, many of them in manufacturing. And we're excited to bring these jobs back to Richmond. As some of you know, Richmond played a vital role supporting our nation's wartime manufacturing efforts during World War II. And Moxion is proud to add to Richmond's rich manufacturing history. It's my privilege to recognize some special guests in attendance today. 5 of the original Rosie the Riveters, remarkable women who worked in this very factory during World War II. Betty Soskin, Ernestine Ween, Marion Nguyen, Jean Gibson, and Marion Souza. The grit, resilience, and moxie that these 5 women displayed when they rolled up their sleeves and joined the wartime manufacturing efforts is simply inspiring. Please visit the museum that's 100 yards that way. It's the Rosie the Riveter Museum, and these wonderful women will be glad to share their story. Under Governor Newsom's leadership, California has developed a thriving green energy economy and solidified its position as the leader in clean technology, environmental sustainability, and climate policy. Companies like Moxion decide to call California home because we know these policies advance innovation, generate investment, and attract talent. We want to thank Governor Newsom, his staff, and his administration for the bold, ambitious climate policies that are creating a more sustainable and resilient future for California. And now it's my honor to introduce Amisha Rai, the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at Advanced Energy United. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction, Paul. It's great to be here. I'm so pleased to be here with all of you. As mentioned, my name is Amisha Rai, and I'm Vice President of Policy and Advocacy for Advanced Energy United. At United, we believe a 100% clean energy future leverages the full benefits of clean distributed, large-scale, and demand-side technologies that are supported by an interconnected grid and transmission system. We need all of these solutions working in tandem to get to a clean energy and transportation future here in California. California is home to over 500,000 advanced energy jobs, over 200 here, and the continued journey to 100% clean will only expand California's clean energy and transportation workforce. I want to thank Governor Newsom, for highlighting clean energy development and the need to accelerate building these projects in state. Understanding the bottlenecks and where the challenges exist during the project timeline is critical so that we can move faster and get clean energy projects online sooner. It's going to take all of us and a lot of hard work to meet our ambition. But California has always led the way and should continue that regional and national leadership. We need to build more clean energy projects here and faster. We need to build more transmission to deliver the clean energy. And we need to work with our neighbors in the West to ensure our regional system is well coordinated and keeps the power on during those hot summer months. The Advanced Energy United team and our business members stand ready to work with you, Governor Newsom, your administration, and the legislature to ensure we are collectively doing everything in our power to accelerate our progress on each of these mission-critical elements to get to 100% clean. As this conversation continues, we look forward to working with all of you so that we can do what's in the best interest for the state, local communities, and households across California. Now I have the honor of introducing and handing it off to California Energy Commission Vice Chair Commissioner Sevagunda. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here with all of you and Governor Newsom. Thanks to Moxian for hosting this event. I'm Sevagunda, Vice Chair of the California Energy Commission. As we begin today, I just want to highlight that we are on our path to our 100% clean energy goals by 2045. Achieving our climate goals is absolutely predicated on two important points: electrifying large swaths of our economy and making sure we have a clean backbone of electricity supporting that. As we move towards that goal, it's absolutely vital, and it's job number one to ensure we have reliability. I'm really happy today to let you all know that the summer outlook is looking much better than we anticipated as we go into this summer. Every year, the climate change keeps throwing us new wrenches. We had incredible heat in 2020, followed by catastrophic fire in 2021, and extremely high heat again in 2022, coinciding with drought conditions. We collectively, as we think through this, how do we plan for those extremes, has been the core focus of most of our energy agencies here, and we look forward to collectively working to solve that problem. As we move into the summer, if we have a catastrophic fire again, coincidental with the number of the heat events, the grid is going to be stressed, and we have to lean on contingencies, which we are collectively planning to make sure we have them in hand. Long term, California has three core challenges that we need to work on as we shore up our reliability. One, planning. We need to absolutely make sure that we have ample data to really understand climate variability as we move forward to put it into our forecasting processes. Two, we need to make sure we are scaling the build of resources rapidly. We have to build about 5 times the clean energy resources that we have today. And finally, we have to continue to work together to make sure we have enough contingencies planned to get through those extreme events. And I want to congratulate the legislature and really thank Governor Newsom for his incredible leadership to giving us the tools necessary to shore up those additional resources. I also want to take this moment to say that we have passed our goals ahead of time from the RPS standpoint. We have 37% of our clean energy today coming from renewable portfolio standard related resources such as solar and wind, about 37%. And when you add hydro and nuclear, other clean energy resources, we're at 59% today. As we did this, thank you. An important element of our clean energy transition is the ability to add more storage. And since 2019, we went from 250 megawatts on the grid to 5,000 this summer. That's about 20 times that we've added in just over 3 years. And that's an incredible step that California is able to do. And I want to congratulate CPUC for the incredible amount of procurement they have authorized and lined up the work that needs to be done. And finally, the amount of storage we have today, when we capture that and harness that, we can support about 5 million households at a given time. So with that, I feel very optimistic as we move forward. We have an incredible track record of innovation and togetherness in California, and as we move forward, we can deliver this reliably, affordably, and equitably for Californians. Thank you. With that, I'll pass it on to President Reynolds.
Good morning. I'm Alice Reynolds, President of the California Public Utilities Commission. It's really a pleasure to be here today to talk about our electrified future. I want to thank our host, Maxian, for inviting us here today. And I'm really proud to be here with a governor who never stops thinking about working to do more to drive harder to get to clean energy. And I take that drive to heart in my work at the CPUC. And for energy systems, planning is key. The system must be ready at any time to serve California's entire energy load at its peak. This means sufficient energy system, electricity generation, transmission, and distribution capacity where we need it and when we need it, and the flexibility to scale up and down to keep the system in balance every day and every night throughout the year. And in California, energy planning is challenging but never dull. One year we're in extreme drought, and the next we're inundated by atmospheric rivers. We have wildfires and extreme heat waves. And that's why the plan that you're going to be hearing a little bit more about today is so important. We have the vision of where we need to go, and this plan sharpens the focus and tells the story of this administration's energy aspirations. So timing is really going to be key. The pace of our clean energy development must be aligned with the rate at which California grows and adopts electric cars, trucks, equipment, and homes and businesses electrify. And scale is also really important. We're electrifying massive ports, LA, Long Beach, the largest ports in the country. We're electrifying warehouses. We're putting in data centers, electrifying truck fleets, airports, stadiums, and the activities of 40 million people living in dense cities, sprawling suburbs, and very remote rural areas. And I want to be clear, by 2045 or sooner, we do intend to get to 100% clean energy for every single Californian, for every single use of electricity, and do it in a way that enables every Californian to have an electric vehicle, to send their children to school in electric school buses, to ride transit and ship goods through ports in a carbon-free system. At the California Public Utilities Commission, since 2019, we have ordered 18.8 gigawatts of clean energy generation and storage to come online, and that's a record for us. These projects must be cost-effective and built at an unprecedented rate. We're setting ourselves up to reap the benefits of long-duration storage, offshore wind, geothermal. Those are just a few of the new sources of clean energy that can provide stable energy profiles during the times of the day when the grid is the most stressed. So, and look at where we are today. Innovation is happening. We're getting clean backup to support the energy system of tomorrow. And then on the demand side, we can't forget about demand flexibility. We're poised to unlock the power of consumers and businesses shifting load with new technologies paired with state-of-the-art rate design. Interagency cooperation has also been critical in our work to date and will continue to be. I work very closely with Vice Chair Gunda, other members of the Energy Commission. All our agencies are working in sync to get to our goals. And we need to do this in a way that manages electricity prices. Electricity sources and systems must be designed to be least cost and equitable. As you'll see with the governor's plan, there are many potential pathways to achieving our decarbonization goals, but front and center must be affordability and equity. We must look at everything we do through that lens. Our vision for a clean electric grid of the future remains clear and constant, and with this plan, our roadmap for how we get there has gotten sharper. So yeah, we have challenges. This is California after all. There are always challenges. And climate change continues to hit us, but we also have real and very exciting opportunities. So I want to thank you for your time today. And with that, I will turn it over to the star of our show, Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thank you. Well, it's great to see everybody. And as I said, I didn't expect so many faces and many familiar faces and so many remarkable and heroic people to be with us here today. But I'm very proud and honored to be here. And look, this is not a topic that necessarily generates a lot of enthusiasm. People going through issues related to the California, ISO and CEC, CPUC and MOUs. No one knows what the hell we're talking about. This whole space can be complicated. And so let me try to do my best to sort of distill the essence of the why. I think we know why we're here. It's the nature of change, this weather whiplash that has been expressed in the speakers you heard prior and the experience all of us here in California have had over the last number of years. We've moved way past the debate around what's happening with our climate. You may not believe in science, but you have to believe your own eyes. You believe in your own experiences, people, lifestyles, traditions being radically altered. And as a consequence of that, we need to alter our approach and strategy to address these extremes, these new realities. And we take responsibility to do that. We love to say about our state, the future happens here first. We're America's coming attraction. It's our responsibility to lead, and we do. No other state has more scientists, engineers, more researchers, more Nobel laureates, no patents emanating out of one state than the state of California. The finest system of higher education anywhere on planet Earth. Eat your heart out, Ron DeSantis. We are proud of our progress, not just our promotion, but we're also proud of our pragmatism, and that brings me to what we are advancing here today. We know the why. The question is what and how. Last week we talked a little bit about how. We need to move with speed and scale. The world we invented, process-laden world we invented, is now competing against us. We have to accelerate our transition. But the question is what and where? And that's what we're laying out here today. Not just a vision. We did that in 2021. In July of 2021, we literally put out a plan talking about the future of our grid. It was an ambitious plan that started to socialize issues around vehicle to grid and two-way charging, talking about buildings to grid, talking about these moving power plants, meaning those cars that you're driving and the wheels that are taking those power plants home and to work. And now we're laying out a specific strategy to actually achieve our audacious goals. The goals we laid out are nation leading, they're world leading. No other jurisdiction in the world has been more ambitious. But I think it's important to highlight few jurisdictions in the world have actually achieved the goals they've set out and done so early. Let me give you a proof point. You heard what Siva said as it relates to our RPS strategy, which is this fancy way of saying what percentage of overall electricity comes from renewable resources. We had a goal in 2020. We exceeded it with 33%. We set out a goal as it relates to rolling back our greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. We exceeded the timeline on that goal. We just announced a few weeks ago our ambitious goals by 2025, 2 years from now, that maybe we can get there. 1.5 million electric vehicles sold in the state of California. We exceeded that goal earlier this year. When we lay out markers, we achieve them. And so we have laid out ambitious markers, 2045, not just 100% renewables as it relates to our electricity grid, but carbon-free future in the state of California. A year ago, we said that's nice, but what about 2030? What about 2035 and 2040? And so we brought into the future even more ambitious markers to get to 90% by 2035 as it relates to our renewables for electricity. And we got the inevitable question, well, how is that possible? All these experts, all these fancy folks, think tanks, all these fossil fuel funded experts and pundits said it just simply can't be done. They don't have a plan. They don't have a strategy. There's no way they can handle this. Remember, we were the first state in America, one of the first jurisdictions in the world to lay out a marker that all vehicles sold in the state of California will be alternative fueled by 2035. They were mocking us just a few years ago, and now the rest of the world, including the EU themselves, have followed us. The question now is how do we deliver the reliability of the grid? How do we achieve the affordability that is foundational in this transition? So we laid out that strategy, that plan. It's about 148,000 megawatts that we'll need by 2045. But here's the good news. Just since 2020, we brought online about 9,000 megawatts just in the last few years. To start doing the math, you see that there's a pathway. We laid out a 10-year pathway as it relates to the transmission grid. And we've identified 45 projects, $7.3 billion of investments to just transform our electrical grid. We laid out the markers on solar and wind, but we recognize that's not going to get us where we need to go. The issue of reliability has to be addressed, and that's why we're here, and that's why I'm grateful for all of you for the hard work you have been doing. You're proving the paradigm. We're not just asserting any longer that we can achieve reliability through ingenuity, through entrepreneurial spirit, and through creativity, and through not just inspiration, but desperation. Out of the ashes of 2019 and the wildfires, this idea was conceived. And Paul, that's a hell of a thing. Sitting up there in, Northern California in your home, north of the Golden Gate, and to sit there and lament about paradise lost and all the extraordinary wildfires we're experiencing, to come up with an idea, put pen to paper, get the capital and get the workforce trained and operational, and now you're actually selling this product, manufacturing here in California, manufacturing in a community that's been ravaged by the fossil fuel industry in the past, but now with the fresh air of progress, you've marked a framework of the future, and you're hiring folks from Oakland, you're hiring folks from Richmond, you're giving people opportunities and second chances. I mean, that's a hell of a story. It's an American story, it's a California-made story, and I just want to thank you for your leadership, Paul. It's what it's all about. And don't forget, California is the #1 manufacturing state in America. #1, California. And it's a point, again, of pride, the ability to connect the innovation, the research and development, the second-to-none workforce, and to bring it all together. And so that's laid out in detail, strategies, plans in this report. I'll just underscore a couple of, I think, interesting asides. It was not that long ago. I remember I had that old EV1. Remember that old Saturn EV1? What happened to the electric car? They took it from us and they destroyed it. In 2010, there were 661 electric vehicles sold in California. I was one of those 661. This first quarter of this year, just Q1, 124,000 electric vehicles. We're getting close to a quarter of all the cars sold today in California are electric vehicles. It's an extraordinary transition, and it will require extraordinary effort to secure that reliability. And as I said, it moves beyond just wind and solar. Battery storage is foundational. Pump storage is foundational. Green hydrogen is foundational. All of these efforts working in concert to provide that reliability, to provide that security that people need to know in terms of advancing this transition, and to provide a blueprint, yes, we said, a roadmap for the rest of the nation as we go on a road trip together in terms of proving the paradigm and hitting our markers on this journey that we're on to a low-carbon, green growth future. You want to be big, we have to be big in big things. This company is a big idea. This state is all about big ideas. And so with pride and gratitude and appreciation, we are here celebrating your success, our collective success, and laid out that marker for building a green future where everyone is included, where no one's left behind, and where we dominate in the next big global industry. That's California. That's part of the dream. And that's why I'm here with gratitude and an abundance of enthusiasm for your example, your faith and devotion to our collective cause. With gratitude, we thank you all for being here, and we're happy to answer any questions, including any details in this 100-plus page plan. Thank you all very, very much for being here.
Good morning, Governor Newsom. Real quick, two quick questions. So you've often talked about quickening the state's sluggish process, in building infrastructure, but there's also been criticism around sort of sidestepping environmental regulations. Can you talk a bit about that? The other thing, real quick, you have Marathon Refinery in Martinez just down the street. They laid off several hundred people, and those who were hired back say that they were making a fraction of what they were when they were laid off. And there's a new report from UC Berkeley that says 26% of those who have been laid off have not been able to find work. So we're talking about all these green jobs. What about the jobs that are being lost in that transition? And then, these new jobs, what will they look like? And, people are also concerned about pay.
Well, we laid out a detailed strategy as it relates to that transition, independent of the program we're promoting here today. We put a marker, not just in terms of our aspiration, but we put down hundreds of millions of dollars to support the retraining and support communities that are impacted by this transition. But let me just mark a point that should be obvious to anyone because it was mentioned prior to my getting up to the mic. We already have 6 times more green energy jobs in the state of California than we have fossil fuel jobs. We've already transitioned. We're well under the way in this transition. This was an old industrial site. Heck, this was where the Model T was built before we advanced our manufacturing might during World War II. This is just part of this larger narrative as it relates to that transition. And these are good paying jobs. These are career opportunities. This is an opportunity for all of us to be included, and we're not here to leave people behind, but we are mindful that we're going to live in a fossil-free future. And we want to define the terms of that future in its most inclusive way possible. And as I said, no state is doing more to support that transition. Now, as it relates to process, enough. We need to build. We need to get things done. This is not an ideological exercise. We're running against time. We're running against time. Mother Nature bats last. She bats 1,000. She's chemistry. She's biology. She's physics. She doesn't mess around. We don't have time to hold hands and talk about the way the world should be. We got to go. We respect process, sure. We respect, of course we do. But why is a project? I was in Patterson, California a couple days ago. 13th year they're working on a solar battery project. 13 years. I mean, it's absurd. I'm for process, but not that nonsense. It's been abused. And so we want to get things done. And we have a pathway and a strategy. And by the way, we have a protocol that was embraced by the environmental community and the labor community just last year. 270-day permitting process, 270-day judicial review. We laid out that marker, worked with the legislature, got it passed. We want to frame that and broaden that, not just to large-scale green energy, but to other areas in our economy. We want to get people to work. We want to get those folks at Marathon that feel like they have been a raw deal, get them back to work. But we've got to build. We've got to create projects. And so we laid out permitting, 11 specific bills last week to reduce permitting time by 3 years, documents by hundreds of thousands, saving you, all of you, every single one of you, taxpayers, hundreds of millions of dollars in the process. If we don't build, democracy is questioned, our capacity to deliver. Why do you think so many of these authoritarians are asserting themselves in their might and muscle, not just around the world, but in some other parts of this country? It's because they say we can't get things done anymore. And they talk about the good old days, right? When this factory was up and running. And these young ladies were here with their muscle and might, producing things in real time. That was point of pride. You were celebrated. People were crying. I saw tears in the eyes of folks, these young men, as you were introduced, because we have pride in the progress, in the work you did to build the world's greatest middle class. That's how we build the world's greatest middle class, is we get moving and we get ourselves out of the way and we move these projects at scale. So forgive me for being long-winded, but I am passionate about this issue. And issues of permitting and procurement matter, and that's why we mean business.
Governor, this is Adam Beam from the Associated Press. You have a proposal in the budget to designate a central procurement entity to develop some of the renewable sources that have been really hard to get, like geothermal and offshore wind. There seems to be some skepticism about that in the legislature. And I'm just curious, how committed are you to that proposal? And do you see it as vital to reaching the 2045 goal?
Absolutely. One of our specific goals in 2045 is 25,000 megawatts of offshore wind, which is an even more reliable, a little less intermittent source of green energy. Part of our challenge on the procurement side for these larger scale projects is being addressed in a trailer bill that I introduced. So my commitments identified in the introduction, but also identified in the presence, and I would be remiss, of President Reynolds, who is leading that effort. And I'm going to ask, because Alice happens to be here and she's leading this procurement strategy, to be even more forceful in a response and color in a little bit of where we are in terms of the progress with the legislature.
Sure. So I can talk a little bit about the central procurement mechanism proposal. We currently have over 40 what we call load-serving entity. These are the retail providers of electricity who are doing procurement on behalf of Californians. And so they're busy getting projects contracted and then eventually built and providing electricity. But we also have potential need in the future for larger scale procurement efforts. And so this proposal gives us an additional tool in the toolbox, so we'll be ready to move when these larger projects such as offshore wind come online or ready to get contracted. And it allows the state to move forward quickly if needed to have the ability to take on contracts for large amounts of electricity when these projects are ready. So essentially, it's another tool in our toolbox to get us ready to do the work that we need to do to get to 2045 goals.
And I couldn't be more proud of the legislature in the last few years. They've moved mountains. We've moved barriers. We've moved people's minds. I love to say, once a mind is stretched, it never goes back to its original form. And what we did last year together in our climate agenda and what we were able to produce in terms of rules and regulations, goals, dreams, nothing more than dreams with deadlines, and legal consequences is second to none. No other subnational jurisdiction has ever done what this legislature has done. So I have all the confidence in the world that they'll deliver on this as well.
Hey, Governor, speaking of reliability and energy, you have backed a stalled proposal in the legislature to join California to a regional grid with other Western states. Obviously, an idea that's been kicking around and is politically controversial in terms of the potential for union jobs going to other states, importing dirty energy from other places, and also ceding some of California's authority in terms of your ability or that of future governors to dictate what happens via the Cal ISO, other things like that. So given that you now support this proposal, how does California join other states without ceding some of that leadership on
Let's be careful about
issues?
I'm not aware of any specific proposal that I've supported. So that's foundation. I'll just assert there's no specific proposal that I've supported. In fact, there's a bill in the legislature that is now a 2-year bill. So that only reinforces the point I'm making. The broader construct around regionalization has to address all of the frame of considerations and concerns that have been expressed, and I think were expressed through your question. And so it's a work in progress.
Hi, Governor. Maggie Ingst from the Bee. You talked about how this plan included some aspects of the vehicle-to-grid infrastructure. And there's a bill moving through the legislature right now that would require EVs to include technology that would enable them to feed electricity to the grid. What is your stance on the role vehicle batteries can play in?
Well, we've been promoting it for years. I mean, this is putting power quite literally back in the hands of people. The opportunity for technology to automate that process, to go home, plug in your car, and get reimbursed because you're feeding it back in the grid, some of that power. We did an estimate. I think, Siva, you were telling me the other day, by 2030. And by the way, I have a friend of mine said, oh, my God, when you do all those electric vehicles, the grid's just going to explode. You guys can barely keep the lights on. I said, well, so what is it, about 90% increase if all those electric vehicles are plugged into the grid? It's about, what, 90% more energy consumption? He goes, well, probably even higher. I said, well, it's just not. Have you ever paused to look at even peak demand by 2030? Peak demand It'll be less than 5% of the grid. More than capable of absorbing that. But the exciting part is by 2030, we expect about 6 million electric vehicles, which is about 6 gigawatts of storage. This is like, literally, these things are storage facilities on wheels, not dissimilar to these, which is variants of the theme. And then you have the chance to go home, feed it back to the grid, and watch your bills decline. It's all about the wallet. And I think it goes to Marathon and the transition. It's all about the wallet. And what we're seeing, you can already see in the future, those cost curves going down. Less money out of your pocket as we advance this transition and we move in this direction. We're mindful of the skepticism and the cynicism in that space. But as it relates to vehicle-to-grid technologies, building-to-grid technologies, the automation and the technology in that same space, and the fact that all the electric vehicle companies are already moving in this direction. We had a demonstration just a few weeks ago when we announced the 1.5 million electric vehicles. Every single automobile manufacturer, including the one started here, this thing called the Model T, Ford, is moving in this direction, and all have these bidirectional opportunities. And it's very, very exciting. As it relates to specific bills, 2,600 bills. I don't know that there are 2,600 problems in California, but there were 2,600 bills introduced, as you know well, at this stage. Hard to comment about specific bills, including this specific bill that I believe you referenced.
Okay. And secondary question, more regarding the budget and the federal debt limit. What's the state's contingency plan if the federal government isn't able to?
Well, we're not victims of fate. I hope we can shape the future, shape the debate. This is a man-made problem by a Californian, Kevin McCarthy. He's created this stress. He's created this anxiety. He's responsible for Fitch's downgrade, at least prospective downgrade that was announced today. One man, Kevin McCarthy, Californian. None of this had to be the case. Literally man-made and created. So my response is, what's made by man can be undone by man. And I have all the confidence in the world, the president and my friends in Congress, that rational minds will prevail and will avoid the absurdity of this process. And we'll put this to rest once and for all, and in the appropriate appropriations process, address the legitimate concerns around debt and deficits. We take those seriously in California. We balance our budgets. We have the highest reserves in our state's history. We're paying down long-term unfunded liabilities. You don't have to be profligate to be progressive. So those are legitimate issues, but they need to be done in a legitimate manner, and they're not being done in a legitimate manner. This is an illegitimate process, purely political theater with profound consequences to the world's soon-to-be fourth largest economy. Eat your heart out, Germany. Forgive me, that's just an aside.
Hi, Governor. Ashley Zavala with KCRA 3. And I guess piggybacking off of this discussion here, with that short-term economic uncertainty, I know potentially in the years to come, the state also faces some economic headwinds as well. And coupled with what's happening on the international stage with the U.S. and China, the war in Ukraine, just how is your plan to move to 100% renewable energy could be impacted? Does this plan account for those risks?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're updating our modeling. You'll see in this report the numeric goals as it relates to those models, the dates to which we will be updating our updates. We're on a rolling cycle, annual. You have 5-year updates. You have 20-year transmission plans, 10-year transmission plans. CARB just came out with their climate action plan. Their scoping plan is referred to in 2022. We'll be updating that in a few years. So all of it's iterative in that respect. And so, sure, supply chain issues we were talking about inside as well, and some component parts. The fact is, because of the CHIPS Act, because of the work the president did with opposition from that same Californian who opposed all of those bills, we're in a much better place for me and for you to feel a little bit more confident about our future in relationship to the geopolitical realities. Hundreds of billions of dollars now coming to the United States because of the work of the Science and Chips Act that the President and the Democratic Party did. I'm proud of that. And you should all be proud of that. We're all beneficiaries of that, despite their opposition. It's just hot air and rhetoric. As it relates to what's happening in China, we maintain one long-standing relationship that I think is essential regardless of all the headwinds, and that's in this space. And many of you know this, but California and China have a unique relationship as it relates to the environment and the technical assistance you have provided under the California Air Resources Board. The work we're doing on cap and trade and other things have been exported globally, and China has been one of our principal partners in terms of that relationship and understanding. And I've worked very hard as governor, taking the baton from Governor Brown and others, heck, going back to Ronald Reagan, who created the California Air Resources Board, to make sure that we keep our eye on that ball despite all the political comings and goings and the consternation and stress and rhetoric. So very mindful of the geopolitical realities, but very proud of the work the President's done and companies like this that are proving a paradigm of our capacity, to start building again, start manufacturing again here in the United States and not having to outshore and around the rest of the globe.
And so with this updated plan that you rolled out today, what would you say is the most significant change to it, I guess, since the last couple of years?
I think it's two things. It's one, we want to mark that the goal setting we've done, that we're moving away from aspiration to application, to implementation. There's a practical reality, a hard-headed pragmatism that we're pushing here. I think the most important thing is to reinforce is we can't get it done unless we go big and bold. And we've got to address the barriers in our way, and that's the permitting process, and that's the procurement process. That's foundational. We're not going to achieve these goals unless we can remove these barriers. You can't wait 13 years. You can't wait 10 years, 5 years to build these large-scale projects. We all want to move beyond that fossil fuel and the dependent. You talk about geopolitical dependency. How about the fossil fuel realities? We're wholly owned subsidiaries about decisions made in the Middle East. Or worse, in the boardrooms of some of these corporations that are taking unprecedented bonuses and stock buybacks at your expense with record-breaking gas prices. I mean, enough of being manipulated by macroeconomics or geopolitical realities. Let's have a stable, reliable, clean, green future that we control. That's what this whole initiative is about.
Thank you. This is Russ Mitchell from the Los Angeles Times. And I'm told to let you know that this is the last question.
That's wonderful, Russ. I mean, I think for everyone else, it's getting cold out here.
It is cold. It is cold.
Like you said, Paul just said we'd be out here 10 minutes. Jesus.
Well, I'll keep it short and just one question. You said you were proud of the legislature. There's a bill going through that would affect driverless trucks in the legislature, and I know that you don't comment on pending legislation, but a lot of the key legislators say their motivation for this bill is a profound lack of trust in the way that Department of Motor Vehicles is regulating driverless vehicles. So my question to you as the ultimate boss of the DMV is, how did things come to the point where key legislators are passing legislation because they are so distrustful of the abilities of the DMV?
Has there ever been a year or a decade or a century where that's not been the case? That's the job of the legislature, oversight. So nothing novel about that, nothing surprising about that. I appreciate that. Co-equal branch government, oversight, make sure we're held to account, raise the bar. I will say we've raised the bar at the DMV. That's not something you say lightly. It's usually a 4-letter word, not a 3-letter word, DMV. But we've got an outstanding guy running it right now. He's done some amazing things, and I have great confidence in him and his team that he's assembled. And look, future's here. We talked about the future. It's something to manifest, and we are manifesting, and driverless technology is here. Those realities are self-evident. By the way, a lot of what's being promoted here makes that a lot easier. And so I think we have to set those rules and the rulemaking. Those are difficult tasks. States across the country are going through that process, and the legislature will have their role and their say, and I look forward to engaging them.
Governor, I asked the question, it's about the trust. And the legislators are saying the DMV is favoring one automaker above the others, and you're not addressing the question about a profound lack of trust in the regulation of a very important issue of public safety.
Well,
could you directly address that? Thanks.
Well, I think I did. That's a judgment. I appreciate it. Look, I don't know the specific issue as it relates to the legislator you're referring to, or the specific. Yeah. Forgive me. I won't belabor it, and I appreciate the two follow-ups. I'm very grateful to the legislature. Direct answer to your question. I'm very grateful to the legislature for their oversight role. I think it's incredibly important. That role takes many shapes and forms. On any given day in Sacramento, you'll hear expression of concern, support, condemnation, criticism on a myriad of different topics. Legislative leaders have a role and responsibility to play to bring in our department heads and agency heads and hold them to account. What you're expressing to me is Monday through Friday. Now, a specific issue as it relates to a specific bill, I don't have the benefit knowledge of a specific bill. 2,603 were submitted. 1,848 were on my desk in my last briefing for consideration. I got through about 20 of them after 3 hours. I did not get through that specific bill. I will say this about the DMV director. I have great trust in him. A particular legislative leader may not. And I respect that, and I'll listen to that. And I have great pride in the two-way conversations we have with the legislature. But forgive me for not being alarmed or shocked. This is part of the job I do every single day, and part of the dialectic of good governance and appropriate oversight. And so I applaud the legislative leaders for taking whatever the issue is seriously, and I applaud my staff for being responsive to their concerns as they have a responsibility to do so. With that, I'm proud of all of you for your patience and your understanding, but more importantly, I'm proud of all of you for being part of this announcement today and the extraordinary work being done here at Maxon. Congratulations, everybody. Thank you. Oh, yeah. You want to go over? Yeah, we'll sail up.